Alright, so this time we have probably the two most popular movies in regards to the whole, that little trend about girls can't box, we can't train girls because they're girls, only men can beat the holy shit out of each other in a ring, so, and the women that proved them wrong, as I didn't want to say the tagline from Girlfight, but that's what they did. Even though none of these people are real, I just enjoy the fact that I make it sound like that. No, they are fictional characters who showed up in their worlds that this can actually happen. Regardless of what crotchety old men think, especially when they're played by Clint Eastwood. I swear, Frankie Dunn just kind of went on to be Walt Kowalski from Gran Torino.
He did?
They just walked right into one movie and another, so... okay, no, to be fair, we're gonna start with $1 Million Baby. Before I just go right into it. Obviously, not only did Eastwood direct and produce like he often does, but he's also given himself the lead role where, I don't know who else it would have been. But no, since this is prior to roles like Gran Torino, it's still, you have to make sure you get that in your head, and then it works very well, and doesn't have a redundancy to it that it might if you try to compare all of his more recent roles. He was real crabby and Trouble with the Curve too. Obviously we introduce his character, and he's always arguing with his priest. His priest drop one of the F-bombs, the PG-13 F-bombs, which is humorous. And he's one of those cases where he's, you know, all of his family's practically gone. He has the daughter that won't talk to him, and everybody's always asking about it. They're like, why don't you, you know, write your daughter? And it's like, he has been, and it's not been working. And he's basically reached a point in his life where everything is so kind of on this monotonous train now that even when he prays, he just kind of gets on his knees and says, "Dear God, you know what I want," and does the cross thing. But pretty much everything in his life now has become habitual, because there's nothing really, all the excitement is now in his past, with the boxing and the training and all that other stuff. He is the manager currently of a dude named Willie, I think. And he basically is so stingy with his title shots that the dude abandons him and ends up going on and winning big, and Eastwood is still just right here. Until we meet Swank, obviously. And Hilary Swank in her second Oscar-winning part. Basically, and the obvious story kind of starts, that we think is going to be the obvious story, where she's just the plucky newcomer that wants to fight. And so that's the best I can do, Hilary Swank. Just put your teeth out there a little bit. I want to fight, balls. And she's, you know, really likable and stuff like that, and she's a waitress that's really, really scraping by. She has to pick up the uneaten food off her customers' plates, and that's basically what she lives off of. She's in a really bad place, and fighting's all she's got. And Swank really takes us to a place where we really, really feel for this person, not just for the situations the writing puts her in, but the way her performance conveys how she deals with them.
There's a reason she has an Oscar.
Too.
Yeah, for this movie is what I'm referring to.
Beating and that bending again.
Yeah.
And then, of course, our other character is Morgan Freeman, who is the wise janitor. That's basically what he is. Also in his Oscar-winning role, his only Oscar-winning role. Because I think Invictus is probably his only nomination since.
That sounds right. I don't think he said anything else.
Yeah. It could be wrong, but I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure. So, and the three of them are kind of our main story point, but there's also a lot of really colorful side characters too. Like Jay Baruchel is like the southern guy that's not all there, and he's really desperate to train. He keeps calling out that guy for a title shot that retired like a decade or 2 decades ago or something, and nobody has the heart to tell him. He has no real awareness. He walks up to Morgan Freeman and is just kind of casually dropping the N-word and saying like, "Oh no, we're cool because I'm not against that." And he's really good in this. He has a really his whole arc as a real kind of has a real good place in this movie's timeline. And then there's kind of the bully, who is Anthony Mackie, and his little sidekick, who is Michael Pena, because Michael Pena was in 2 Best Picture winners in a row. And those 2 Best Picture winners also happen to share a screenwriter. Paul Haggis adapted this from I want to say what was it? Was this like a series of books, or it was something along those lines? And the thing about it is that the whole movie, it's really just the first 45 minutes, but this whole setup where it's Frankie and Sarah kind of run the gym, and Maggie's there, and she, is the poor waitress that wants to fight, and you have Jay Baruchel doing his thing, Anthony Mackie doing his thing, and all the others. The guy he's already training, or was training. You could pretty much stop the story point here, and you'd still have a really good movie on your hands. Like, the whole movie could have just been about the people that inhabit this gym, and it would have totally been watchable. But of course, naturally, we go on, and it starts off this way, and then we think it's going to be another thing, when Maggie's going to get really successful, and all her fights, go really well. She's practically undefeated. There's the funny thing where we're getting kind of a montage of it, and then she's in the corner, and then she just walks off screen, and we hear 2 punches, a body thudding, and a bell, and then she just walks back into the frame. And that's all well and good. And then this movie just sucker punches us right in the face. Maggie herself does in fact get sucker punched in the face, but we as an audience feel it too in a different way. Because this is not the story that we thought it was. And I remember when this first came out, that wasn't really they kept it pretty well under wraps for a while there. And it was one of those major spoiler things that once you realize what it was and where this movie was headed, it's a serious gut punch, to say the least. Where she gets we kind of, throughout the movie, they kind of sprinkle in this information to us about this fighter who was a former prostitute in Berlin that fights dirty. And we're given that information, and then it just kind of leaves us with it for a while. And then she and her manager return to set up the fight. And then this dirty fighting results in this very, very freak occurrence.
This scene is nasty.
Where Maggie basically already lost the fight, and then she gets sucker punched into her stool that was laying the wrong way. That just paralyzes her, and it just keeps going downhill and downhill and downhill until we stop. No, there is stuff in there throughout where it's not. It isn't totally bleak. Come on, but there are moments in there of hope, and good. Some of them are quite bittersweet. Like there's the thing with her infuriating family that's run by Margaret Martindale, where we just realize the disgusting, despicable people these are, and just how selfish and lazy they are, and how they basically have been using her fame and fortune to take trips to Universal and Disney. While she's laying in a hospital bed, literally unable to move. Her body is basically decomposing because she can't move, and she's still alive. And just to see her finally stand up to them and tell them to basically fuck off, and they're lazy and hillbillies and all that. It's very, very satisfying, but at the same time, we know her state, so there's like a very bittersweetness to it. Similar bittersweetness with the scene where Mackie finally gets his comeuppance. Where Anthony Mackie's kind of been the bully of the gym, and he's the arrogant type. And he makes fun of Jay Baruchel and stuff like that. And then Freeman comes out, and Mackie's just beating the shit out of Jay Baruchel badly. Just really, really fucking him up. And we get to see Freeman knock his ass out. Knock one of his teeth out, even. And it's this really, really satisfying moment. But then Jay Baruchel runs away from the gym in shame, and we don't see him again until the end. And it's really, for every bit of, like, satisfaction we get in the movie, there's always some kind of bittersweet quality about it. Where this movie remains a bummer for, like, the entire last hour until its very, very end. But it ties it up really well because we do have, like, Jay Baruchel does come back, and it's a really nice moment. Especially the way it ties in with Scrap's narration, which is one of those cases, it's kind of age-old now, but back in 2004 it wasn't seen a whole lot, where it's the, once it's revealed what the narration has been the whole time, and then you kind of have an, oh, that's nice moment. Or the book thief where it's fucking the Grim Reaper, but in this particular case it's, you know, just Freeman writing to Frankie's daughter, which is nice. She'll probably just say, you know, screw it and get rid of it, but just the fact that he's doing that is kind of, it's a nice emotional point. And while we're on the topic of him, actually, I would just like to mention that Freeman's Oscar win doesn't make very many people happy.
Yeah, I've heard that.
The people love the fact that he does have one, but not for the fact that it's for this movie. Because this is obviously an ongoing thing in Oscar history, but this is like one of the most clearly blatant examples of it. Is this or is this not one of the most blatant examples of a career win you've ever seen?
Oh, for sure.
So it's like, it was like just the right part in just the right movie to where in any other case it'd be like, he was good in that. To being an Oscar-winning performance. But he's not without really good scenes, though. There's the scene where he talks about, to Maggie about how he was a fighter and how he ended up losing his eye. And the way he's able to bring more to that wide janitor role. Like I was saying that, but I mean, that is the role, too, just kind of as a type. But I mean, he really does bring something to it. And the back and forth between him and Eastwood is always, because they have history, obviously, with, like, Unforgiven and such. It's clear that he and Eastwood have, like, a past. Like, not just in the movie, but also in real life. And that all kind of comes together and makes their relationship really believable. Let's see. There is, I actually think, apparently this is unpopular. Apparently, the look, that trademark Eastwood look that pretty much started with Mystic River and has gone through most of his movies now, where the look has been criticized a lot and compared to, if I'm getting this right, a bus station bathroom is what most of Clint Eastwood's movies look like, because they're so dark and the lighting is so sparse. I get it, but for this movie, I feel like it really, really works. And just the way, you know, people are kind of framed within the shadows. And just the whole aesthetic of it really works. And also kind of speaks in a way for itself without obviously saying anything because it's photography and not speaking. But it kind of speaks for itself. One thing that kind of, I can't tell if this is a good thing or maybe not. This whole thing with, the movie's 2 hours and 12 minutes, which is, you know, lengthy. But then again, the movie is really, really slow paced.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, this 2 hours and 12 minutes is not fast. Like, it really, really takes its time. The question is just whether that was deliberate or not. And with how much of a kind of, you know, sweeping story we have here, from getting from one point to the other, like Scrap is saying at the end, how she started with no hope whatsoever, and she ended up with like a title shot. It's very, you know, it's a very spanning story. So I would say it's probably intentional that the movie doesn't feel like it's, you know, moving really fast or anything like that. So it takes a good movie to be able to pull that off. To make sure you get that deliberate pacing down just right to where you're not moving too slow to a fault. This movie carries it really well. Another thing that works really well also is, I was talking about the relationship between Eastwood and Freeman, but the relationship with her also. Because obviously that role Freeman takes on where he's the one that kind of accepts her before Eastwood does and kind of teaches her in secrecy and after hours and stuff like that. And they just have a really nice connection kind of immediately. Because there are these two friendly souls that kind of come together. Because regardless of the fact that she is, you know, this is another thing that Swank does really well with it, is apart from having, like, the pluckiness and the likability to her, there is definitely, the whole point of the movie is that there's a real toughness to her, too, underlying. And how she really sells that she comes from those hard places and has that determination to get from one impossible place to the other. I also particularly like the moment where she's so... That innocence about her is kind of always there no matter how much she gets into it. Like, even no matter how many people she, like, knocks out in one punch, there's still kind of that innocence to her. Like, the moment when she gets her nose broken, and Frankie sees it and just says, "Oh, your nose is broken." Her response is just, "Oh, dang!" It's like, your fucking nose is broken, but... she just always has that quality within her, until she reaches that breaking point, you know, where she's biting her tongue off trying to commit suicide. The movie goes so dark, and once it gets there, it just really...
And it stays there.
It's definitely, the movie is a tragedy through and through, regardless of the highs and lows we see. But does that without seeming like it's totally wallowing in it and just doing it for the sake of being, you know, really bleak and depressing and stuff like that. It's just kind of... That's just the way the story goes, and it sucks, and it happens. So, to the best of people, too. So... and that final shot, too, when he goes back to the pie place, when nobody's really sure where he went, and they hope that he's somewhere, you know... kind of dealing with it and getting, you know, not just disappearing or going into depression. There's a bit of hope that that's where he went, I think. So that's comforting. And the whole thing, that's the whole thing though, is it's less really about how bleak it can get and is more just about just these really broken people, these really broken and lonely people that manage to find each other and find like some kind of connection and obviously a common bond, and they just have that comfort in each other. And it just happens to be a really good boxing movie on top of that.
Oh yeah, I love boxing movies.
And of course, there were some people like to say there were 3 players in the Best Picture race that year, along with like for a while there it seemed like it was Aviator. I mean, I wasn't too keen on the awards race as much as I am now, so I'm not quite sure exactly how the race was going. But at the time, it felt like it was The Aviator versus Sideways, and this kind of came from out of nowhere and won. Because Freeman seemed a little bit up in the air, and it was Swank versus Benning.
I was definitely rooting for Sideways.
And, you know, Freeman took it, and then Swank took it. And then Scorsese took the back seat again, and they gave it to Eastwood again, and then the movie just took picture too. It just seemed like it all happened so fast. But there is a reason. It really, you know, holds up too. Like, I think it's still typically thought of in extremely high regard. Because a picture win, especially when it's up against a movie like Sideways or a Scorsese movie, a really great... I was very much on the Aviator team that year. But even so... I would put this second best. I don't love Sideways the way everybody else does. I like it a lot, but yeah, this is... If it wasn't going to be The Aviator, this is what I would have gone with. The other 2 options were Finding Neverland and Ray.
I like... Oh, no, I was... wow, for a year it is. Yeah, I was in the Ray bandwagon for sure.
side rays. Just put them together.
Yeah, that'll work.
So yeah, I'm fine with its win, and I think it fits the roster pretty well. Even though Rocky is on that list too as a Best Picture winner, I think I was upset at the time because I was really on the Aviator team and the Scorsese team, but yeah, going back and watching this, I'm really surprised how well it has held up. In fact, because it's like I said, usually with picture wins and a movie like this, it seemed to kind of come from out of nowhere to do it. Especially since Eastwood's already done this when he won for directing and producing Unforgiven.
Right.
When it won. So yeah, it's a real. It's not an easy story to digest. It's a really tough go, but and I struggle to even say it's rewarding because it's just so bleak. But like I said, the closest thing we get to a happy ending is the fact that Baruchel comes back to the gym. That's basically our silver lining. And it works for me. It works enough for me to make it. Yeah, I feel like the ending goes about as well as it could have, despite everything. So, yeah, I'm good with it. Girlfight, on the other hand, is it was one of those breakout Sundance movies. It was the year 2000. It was Michelle Rodriguez's first movie, if I remember correctly, because it was the year before The Fast and the Furious. It also won something. It won like one of those lower awards at Cannes too. And Michelle Rodriguez is the lead character here, and I guess it's kind of disheartening when you look at it now, because she's so good. Having just basically going to an audition and getting the part. I think there were like 300 people that she had to fight through or something to get the part. Through auditions, not like the movie, but that would have been some interesting auditions.
That was great.
No, she feels perfectly cast for starters. I mean, she's basically, it's the average inner city student cliche. She's got the bad temper. She didn't have anyone to look up to. She has the broken home. She's on the verge of being expelled from school for fighting. It's very, yeah. Michelle Pfeiffer's going to be teaching her before too long. So, or Samuel Jackson in 187, even though he's no longer with us. But spoiler. But the great thing that she does here, that's when I say disheartening, is that she shows something here to where she has that tough. It's that Michelle Rodriguez character we know from all her other movies, where she's really tough and and standoffish and will beat the shit out of you and threatening and all that stuff. But in this performance, there's something underneath that's really, she's got like a vulnerability about her. There's really potent emotion in there. It's just a really, really real performance. Something that directors she worked with after this movie basically decided to ignore completely. And they're like, you remember the exterior of that performance? Just do that all the time. Don't bother with the other stuff you did. All the stuff that made the characters feel, like real people that would really go through this. Because it feels very much like a real situation. No, just do the tough, badass thing. That's all you need to do. It sucks that she doesn't get more chances to show stuff like she did with this performance. With that being your first performance, that's kind of depressing that directors are that stingy in letting you do that, but that's how it goes. And obviously it deals with the whole Paul Calderon from Pulp Fiction, the bartender, and the dude that lost his pinky in 4 rooms, is her dad, and he's basically the your gender means everything type, very, very standard, where she has a brother that's a little weakling, and of course she is her, but regardless of what their personalities are or the way they are, the fact that he's the boy means he's going to be taking boxing lessons, and she's the girl, she's going to be doing whatever it is she does. There's one time in the movie where they're talking about it, and she's just like, well, I didn't make the cheerleading team or something like that. But of course, we realize that the brother has no interest in the boxing lessons whatsoever, so she takes them up instead, and a fighter is born. Now, and that's kind of the main focus of the movie, is just how much the realism really adds to the story. Because even in the more dramatic moments, like there are some moments where it feels maybe a tiny bit like, yeah, that's very movie-like. But really, for the most part, they really, really keep up the realism. Like I said, even in the really, really dramatic moments, they keep it grounded enough, which is impressive. And then there's the this is kind of where a normal movie would fail, but obviously she has to have a love interest. Even Michelle Rodriguez in an indie movie where she gives a multi-dimensional performance must have a love interest. But there's more to it than just him being her love interest. There's the whole, kind of, I struggle to say gender equality, but yeah, that's kind of an ongoing battle between them with that. It bothers me a little bit that his name is Adrian. Because we're dealing with because this very much this very much has a Rocky feel. When you look at the original Rocky, and on the outskirts you see it as just a boxing movie. When you actually watch the movie, there's very, very little boxing in it. There's one match in Rocky, and it's at the very end. That's the only boxing we pretty much get in Rocky. The rest of it is about his character and how he basically deals with being where he's been brought up. That's exactly what this movie is, just from a girl's perspective. So I can't help but wonder if that was a bit of an obvious reference, naming her boyfriend, because the shoe's on the other foot, But whatever. But then obviously the inevitable plot turn comes that that's her opponent in the ring in the climactic fight. It's her own boyfriend. And yeah, like I said, it seems very, very movie-like, but just everything leading up to it at that point just kind of makes it all ring true. So, it's all good. And the interesting thing about it is that the fights aren't that stylized. Like, they're really not at all. To the point that I'm sure some people would kind of see it as a problem, but the fights are so not stylized that the climax probably will feel very, very underwhelming. It's almost like extremely anticlimactic. This movie is, because the boxing is just handled from kind of, it's there and it's prominent, but they know its importance to the story and that it's not the most important thing in the story. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's background, but it's definitely there to just kind of be the motivation when the characters are what our real focus is. And the writer-director knew this and handled it really well. Her name escaped me. It's Karen something. Shit.
Yeah.
And like I said, those fights are so character-driven too, where it's not just people beating the shit out of each other.
Kusama.
Yes. So I thought that was a really, really great use of this setup. Because there's also there's even stuff like when they the way they use the really, really cliche quotes or whatever, just on pieces of cardboard throughout the gym, and how this very much the whole surroundings feel like a place, like a real place and a real setting that these really real people come from, and it's almost just as important to their development in the story as what's going on in the story, like the fighting, for instance. And there's the details like the guy at the end before the big final fight that's doing the really, really half-assed Starsfield banner. That's always been really funny to me. My only issue, honestly, is that when I first saw this movie for the very first time, I really, really loved it. A lot. I was very, very much a big fan of this movie. When I saw it again many years later. It was probably a 10-year gap in between the first time I saw it and the second time I saw it. And I don't know what happened, but it's a good movie without a doubt. But for some reason I've never loved it the way I loved it that first time. Like it was baffling to me the second time I saw it because I was like, wait, the first time I saw it really hit in a really big way, but now I just see it as this is a good movie. I really wish I could see it the same way I saw it that first time, but alas, I do think it's good, but for some reason it never reaches the greatness it does that first time you see it, which is disappointing, but it could be a lot worse. It could have just gone way downhill the second time I saw it, but no, it's very good. I certainly prefer $1 Million Baby. It really just the total and complete emotional impact that it makes without feeling. There's definitely a way to see that $1 Million Baby might seem manipulative as far as emotions are concerned, but I feel like it just hits in such a powerful way that I find it really hard to see it that way. So, yeah, that's kind of an emotional peak you don't reach very often. Have to really be careful doing. And Eastwood just completely pulled it off.
Yeah. So it's another edition of Versus. Next week, your cryptic comment is actually going to be... I forgot it. Justice System, yeah. That's going to lead us into August, where at the end of the month, the first of our predictions for the Oscars is coming.
Yeah, we should probably work on those.
Yeah, probably should. Continue to watch the segments here on the Podcast Network, at Podcast Network on Twitter, Facebook fan page is Podcast Network, and our Zazzle store is Podcast Network. Check out all of our content, and thank you once again for watching Versus. And AJ, any parting words?
That's it.